learn how to sell. That would be the biggest thing. I think a lot of people who want to start businesses, they focus on a lot of different things, but they don't actually go out and get customers. And I think Mark Cuban said that sales solves all problems, something like that. And I think that's something that's super underrated. People are a little bit maybe thinking that we're in the tech world, so we're all behind the computer. We're not going to really talk to people, or we're not going to go out and make a sale. That's the lifeline of the business. If there's no sales, there's no revenue, there's no business.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's built several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we focus on helping startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. And today we have another great guest on the podcast, and I'll probably kill your name, but it's Ilya Brotzky. Even close?
The first name was right, Ilya, but last name's Brotzky.
Brotzky, I slaughtered it, and I apologize, but I've never been good at pronouncing any names, so don't take any offense. But
I've been called much worse. Don't worry.
All right. But Ilya, he is an immigrant to the U.S. I think when we talked a little before the show, left the Soviet Union, and when he was at about 2.5 years of age, went over to Israel, then went to Canada, and then you're still in Canada. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm based in Vancouver. I did go to school in the U.S. in upstate New York, so I'll spend some time and travel.
More that journey as we go along, but moved all around, immigrant, U.S., Canada, Israel, Soviet Union, just all over. Parents got into multi-level marketing when you were younger, and so he read a lot of multi-level marketing books, and kind of got into business. Even as a little kid, you started to recycle, set up a lemonade stand. Then you did swimming for a while, got out of swimming, did social welfare programs, graduated, went to Brazil, stayed there for 4 years, got into startups, created an online course in Brazil, and then brings you all the way up to Van Hack, which is where you're at today. So there's my brief introduction and overview. And with that, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Devin. Great to be here.
So I gave kind of the soup to nuts, really quick overview, but why don't we jump back into your story a little bit and start at the beginning and tell us a little bit more about your journey?
For sure. So you definitely hit the nail on the head about the immigration side. That's been a huge part of my life. And the first memory of my life actually was getting on a train to go from Krasnoyarsk to Moscow, and getting a flight to Tel Aviv in Israel. So I really just remember leaving my home country, never actually grew up there. So I always knew what it's like to kind of be a foreigner and be the other person, the guy who doesn't really understand the language and the customs and things like that. So I had to adapt and learn quickly, and then moved again when I was 5 to Canada. You mentioned the MLM stuff. For sure, that was a big part of my early childhood, from kind of 5 to 10 years old. My parents did a lot of Amway, and at the time I didn't really know what it was. I just knew that we would listen, instead of listening to the radio, we would listen to these motivational tapes of how to be your own boss and these kind of things, and read books like, actually, this book I still have here with me, How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. I don't know if you can see it in the virtual background or for those folks online. And just learning and kind of seeing that, hey, there's something else out there other than being a small business or than having a job, and is having your own business, and how that could be a way for you to have control of your life and kind of freedom to do things you want to do. The Amway thing didn't really work well with my parents, and I know there's a lot of kind of preconceived notions about that, and I just say it didn't work out for us, but I'm sure it has for others. But what stuck with me was the education piece. And then also, as you mentioned,
quick. So what kind of, in a positive way, so don't take it insulting, what kind of 8-year-old reads multi-level marketing books and finds them interesting?
Well, they're not really books about multi-level marketing. That's the thing. It's not really about like how to, but it's like life skill books, right? The Magic of Thinking Big, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. Like, these are both like worldwide best-selling books. It's not just the MLM folks. I think a lot, like I've realized now, looking back, like a big part of their business is actually selling these and kind of making profit on the education, which I didn't know. I mean, I was a 6-year-old kid. So for me, it was just like, instead of, I don't know, going to watch Power Rangers after school. I did that too. But like also in addition to that, I would kind of read some of these books or learn these lessons. And we had things like Rich Dad Poor Dad and all these kind of like just from a young age. Learning about business and just that's been a big part of kind of my childhood. And because my parents, they came to Canada with nothing, right? We had two kids, no language, no money. It's very kind of like is typical immigrant story. Well, not so much these days, but like back then, I guess. Like how people come these days. A lot of, I guess, skipping ahead, a lot of people who we help bring to Canada, they come with six-figure jobs, so it's a little bit different. But the point is that it's not really MLM books. It's kind of sales books, really, sales and marketing books and business books. So yeah, that's I think like the MLM stuff has a lot of negative connotations, pyramid schemes, all those things. But the one positive that I got from it was that learning how to work in a team, learning how to just sell. Like you said, from a young age, I started like going door to door and asking people if I can recycle their bottles of pop cans and getting 5 cents, 10 cents, 20 cents, 25 cents from each one, and getting $5 from a day. And I was like, well, man, I mean, $5 in a day, as a 6-year-old. And that was exciting to me.
And I think it's cool. And, so I kind of jest, what kind of, 6 or 8-year-old read those books. But on the other hand, I think it's a great lesson for kids to learn at a young age. And one of the things that, me and my son, who is now 10 years old, had to think for just a second, does is he loves to listen. So I love to listen to podcasts. It's kind of like, do a podcast, but a lot of the way that I learn, I don't listen to just, fanciful or other podcasts. It's really a lot of information. I listen to marketing podcasts. I listen to business podcasts and everything else, and kind of that same way I just like to learn and do startups and small businesses. But my son gets into them now as well, and so it's kind of that almost gives me kind of the newer age version, but the same kind of a thing is what kind of little kid. One of my favorite ones that he likes to listen to, I guess two of them are, and I'll aside for just half a second, is
of course.
And in American Innovations, and they're all about head-to-head business competitions between the biggest businesses, and American Innovations goes through and how they created all of everything from radar to microwaves to cereal to all the different kind of businesses out there, and he gets into them and loves them so much or just as much. And so I think it's a really cool trait when the parents are involving them, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, involving your kids and letting them see kind of that business side, getting that training from a young age does a ton of good. So as they get older, they have that skill set and they already have that excitement and drive to do that. So with that, now getting back to your journey or going back from my side. So you did your parents did the multi-level marketing. You read some of the books that are associated with that, motivational sales books. You did that, some of the things, lemonade stand, recycling cans growing up. And then where did that, now you fast forward to high school or college, how did that kind of now play into your journey?
For sure. And I just want to say I completely agree with what you said. And it's so cool to hear. There were a lot of actually tapes as well from that we listened to in the car. So it's kind of the modern day version of podcasts, or like the old school version of podcasts is the cassette tapes, right? Yeah. So fast forward to high school. I was a swimmer growing up, like since age 8, a competitive swimmer. And I was lucky enough to get into Cornell through a swimming, not a scholarship, but basically the swim team was allowed me to kind of, my grades weren't like, I wasn't a straight A student, but I would say a solid B+. But even though like I didn't have the best grades, I was able to get into university because of swimming. The swim teacher kind of indicated me there, swim coach, sorry. And that really changed my life. And I moved from Vancouver to Ithaca, New York. And kind of spent my university time, my time there, and really exposed me to kind of a global student body. Met people from all over the world, and I also started doing business. Sorry, my dad just called me. So started doing business and a degree there, and learned about marketing and sales and those kind of things. And that was also kind of a great way to get a practical experience of how to do business during university.
No, and I think that's awesome. So you got in, swim scholarship, went to university, got an education. Now you're coming out. Did you go right to your own startup? Did you do your own business, or how did you kind of make that next transition from getting schooling to now getting into the business world?
Yeah, so at the time, I graduated right during the financial crisis in 2010, I guess 10 years ago now. And all my friends were going to Wall Street or consulting or Silicon Valley. And I actually was looking for an international job. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I always thought I can always come back home and get a job kind of in Canada or North America. So I got three job offers, one in India, one in China, and one in Brazil. And I had spent a week in Brazil doing a volunteer spring break program, which I really enjoyed. So then when I got the job in Brazil, it was also the best paying one and kind of most exciting because it was at a large mining company, a very legitimate company, where the other two offers were a little bit more like earlier startups or not something I was totally interested in. And so I took that one, and that really started my kind of international journey in South America and Brazil. So it was really kind of, I would say, looking back, not what I was thinking I would do after university. I didn't think I'd work for a mining company, and I only lasted a year and a half there, I guess, because I was much more interested in the fact of living in Brazil, working in Brazil, than I was interested in specifically the mining sector, that specific company. But it was a really great experience. I learned Portuguese. I always joke that I had the best first job ever. I lived in a hotel on an island in the beach in Brazil. I guess sounds cooler than it was, but it was really fun. And just learned that culture and saw that there was kind of a burgeoning economy there at the time.
Living on a beach or living on an island by a beach does sound like a pretty cool experience. So I guess it sounds cooler, but I would be right there with them if it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, especially after the upstate New York winters, it was very nice.
So now you did that. Sorry, had my kids walk in the background for just a second, so I had to tell them to shut the door that I was on a podcast. So there you get for the real life experience of doing that. They came to visit my office, so there's your 30-second aside. But now going back to your journey, so you did that. You worked on the island. You got to go swimming. You got to have your fun time in Brazil. Stayed there for a period of time. So now, how did that transition to what was the next step of the journey from there?
Yeah, so kind of the next step was that they sent the company sent me back to Canada, to Toronto, and I was working in the Canadian HQ. And I really started realizing that it hit home to me that I wasn't really enjoying the company. I was enjoying the fact that I was in Brazil. That's when it really kind of manifested. And so I decided to just quit my job in January 2012 and start working for a nonprofit in the slums of Rio. I had met this lady in the airport of all places. She asked me for the time. It turned out to be a professor at Stanford Business School who had a nonprofit that she was running in the slums or favelas of Rio, doing data collection and helping consumer goods companies like Unilever and Johnson & Johnson understand the market sentiment for products like soap and water filters and things that would help benefit the community to have, and then also make money for the company. So kind of for profit and for good. And I was really excited about that. So I went and like, kind of did this stereotypical millennial thing, I guess, quit your job and go chasing social innovation. And it was really tough, but ended up working out. And yes, spent 6 months there as a volunteer, made a pretty big sale actually with Unilever, with the six-figure sale there, which was exciting. And then I found a startup accelerator in Brazil, in Rio, that was connecting American investors to Brazilian startups. And then long story, but I ended up joining that as one of the companies there as a co-founder, and working in the accelerator, learning all about the tech world. And that's kind of where I got my first experiences with startups and software engineering and the tech scene.
So now, so you make that transition. You continue to work for the companies. Now, how does that? And now I assume, and if we missed any steps, but now that kind of brings you from there. You went to where you're at now with Van Hack. Is that right?
Yeah. So what had happened there is that I was working in ed tech. So I was working in these online education companies, and I was really interested in how you can kind of create content once and it could be listened to or sold many times. Kind of how we're doing on this podcast, right? We're going to go record this once and then people can listen to it as many times. There's no limit. And so you see companies like Udemy doing a really good job with that. And the Khan Academy was kind of starting to bubble up at that time. And just there was a lot of kind of these revolutionary ideas, and our thinking was to bring that to Brazil and have kind of a Khan Academy or Udemy Skillshare of Brazil. It didn't end up working out, but what had happened was I met a lot of these tech professional software developers who were in Brazil who asked me about advice to move to Canada. And I started realizing there's this real need, this real hunger for people, because Brazil, as great as a place it is to visit, it's not the best place to live. We all have images of samba and the beach and soccer, But when you're there living day to day, there, there's a lot of crime and things like that. So people, their life goals is actually to relocate to some place like Canada or Europe or the US. So a lot of them just started asking me questions like, hey, like, tell me more about what's the job market, or how do I move? What's the visa process? All these things. And I started just had that back in my mind as something maybe I can do. And when I came back home, I ended up, startup didn't end up working out. It always kind of didn't work out the way I wanted to. So I actually just went back to Canada and moved back in with my folks, with my parents. It was a pretty low point in my life. And at that time, I started getting messages on Facebook from a lot of these people that I met at meetups and events, and friends of mine asking me, hey, I see you post a picture that you're back in Canada. Tell me more about the market. Can I get a job, etc. So that was the initial spark for what became VanHack.
So you come back in, low point of your life. You're working, living out of the parents' basement, which, hey, is again a typical millennial. You have the high of the typical millennial and the low, and yet you continue to soldier on. And so you living in your parents' basement, trying to decide what you're going to do next. People are reaching out to you. How does that translate into, hey, I've got an idea for a startup that I'm going to start going on?
Yeah, so I started getting these messages, and I thought, there could be something here. Maybe I can create a course. Maybe I can teach people how to come to Canada, maybe I can teach them how to code. Maybe I can teach them, something. So, because I had that ed tech experience and ed tech background before, so I thought, why don't I just put up a landing page and test the idea out? And I put up a really, really badly designed, full of spelling mistakes because it was in Portuguese, just targeted at Brazilian engineers. And say, hey, if you want to learn how to move to Canada, sign up here. And I think I posted in a few Facebook groups, and I got like 100 signups in the first day or something like that. I remember exactly, but it was a lot. And then that really said, whoa, like that's something. There's something here. And then I started interviewing and having calls with all the people who signed up. Anyone who would talk to me, I would just get on a call and learn more about them and what they wanted and what they're looking for. And what I learned was that they wanted career coaching. They wanted to learn how to do a resume. Because, the little things like for us, it'd be super simple, but for them, it's, if, for example, if I were to tell you, hey, go get a job in Japan, you probably need to learn about Japanese culture and how all those little things work. And it's a big difference. So there's, there wasn't a lot of content for software development content, but not like English for software developers or interview practice tips for tech talent. So that's what we created. And that was kind of the first product that VanHack launched. And that got us, started, and we started making money. People started buying the course, and I thought, holy, there's a business here. And then December 31st, 2015, I quit my job and started working on VanHack full time.
Okay, so quit your job, decided, hey, I'm going to go all in on this. I think I can be a good entrepreneur. I can get a startup. And was it all roses? And from the first time you jumped all over, did the startup, it was everything you thought of? Was it a hard road, easy road, middle of the line road, or how did that go for you?
It was pretty hard. I think like there was a lot of challenges in the beginning. Things like, had some people who were working with me that weren't the best fit, and that was really challenging and stressful figuring that out. The technology, we didn't really have a technology platform. Sales, it was just basically me selling all the time, and constant struggle of like, hey, are we going to pay the bills this month? But things just kept going. Like we ended up getting into Startup Chile and moving to kind of moved back to South America for 6 months, moved to Chile and did a program there. And then from there we went to Germany, and there's a whole story I can go further. But in the early days, it was really a grind. But there was always something like, I don't know, anytime I was kind of thinking, oh, maybe this isn't the right thing, something positive would happen. So I remember distinctly actually one moment where I was my wife and I, we were, at this point we had moved out of my parents' place and we had our own apartment. And we were like, man, like we're not making enough money. Like our rent is too high. Maybe we should look for a place to live that's a little bit cheaper. So we started looking at kind of cheaper apartments, and we went to one place that was just especially really just bad. And it was about $400 cheaper per month than our current location. I remember like leaving that place and just being really depressed, and my wife was just like super upset with me, like, hey, like we really have to move and go to this like terrible place. And I was like, I don't want to, but I don't know, like we're just having this discussion. And then that day we had done a webinar for VanHack Premium, where we had talked about the product, and we just did a promotion to get people to sign up to the VanHack course. And then the next morning I woke up and we had, I think, 4 or 5 people who attended the webinar purchased the course, and the money that we made was about $400. So basically it was this moment of like, whoa, like because of this extra income I'm getting, at this point I was still working at my job, but that extra income would be enough to like be the difference between living in a not like a pretty okay place where we were and like a really terrible place. So that was really great. And there was another moment where I remember I was at Costco and like I got money from a course, and that helped me pay the Costco groceries, like little things like that. Which now, like, we have 40 employees and making millions of dollars in revenue. It's a little bit different, but at that time it was like the really like small, like kind of, but super meaningful revenue that just kept us going.
No, I think sometimes that's almost the most fun time. Now, you look, at least looking back at the time when you're doing it, maybe, it's a little bit harder. You're saying, oh, is this that? But now you look back and you say, yeah, we've got more employees, things are going well and successful. And then you almost kind of nostalgic for the good old days when, hey, I remember when it was just me and we were excited when we made $400 in a month, because that means that we had a little bit extra spending cash. And now you look and say, we make that in a day type of a thing. And yet that excitement is, it changes and it evolves a little bit. So with that, so now you fast forward to today, you guys, you've built a company, you have employees, you have much of big revenue. Where you guys take it the next, 6 to 12 months? Where's the road lead for you guys now?
Yeah. So, I mean, fast forwarding like 5 years of I guess work and kind of where we'll get to where we are. We had a very interesting year in 2020, as I'm sure everyone did. But with us specifically, it was our whole business was about relocating developers. So we find a developer in Brazil, for example, and relocate them to Canada. That's our kind of, I guess, first route. But then we've done a lot of relocation from many other countries to Europe, and a lot of remote jobs in the US as well. So I think for now, like what we want to do is basically our goal is to become the largest international tech recruiting company in the world. Helping as many developers, tech professionals relocate, like the most amount of tech professionals relocate out there. And we're also seeing a lot more kind of these demand of work from anywhere. So you can find jobs that will help you maybe start working remotely at the beginning, then you can move back and kind of have that flexibility where you can choose where you live. And I think that's a really big value proposition that companies can provide, and one that they don't really think about. So just now it's more just execution. We have, I would say, a really solid product, a really good platform. Companies can come in, sign up, hire people, do the whole interview process just using the software. And we can, vet the candidates and understand all that. All those things is really, really, like, before it used to be manual, now it's almost all automated. And I feel like we just want to get bigger and get more companies and like to know about VanHack and to hire from us and help change more lives. Because I think we've kind of, to use an analogy, we've struck oil, and now we just want to keep digging and see how big the well is, and not stop and just keep focused. I think a lot of companies, they tend to change their mindset or maybe look for different things to do. For us, it's all about staying focused and doing what we do really, really, really well.
No, and I think that to your point, I think sometimes as you get bigger, you have a bit more income, you start to say, oh, we should branch out and do these extra 20 things, and we'll make more revenue and we'll expand to these verticals. And sometimes you lose that, and then you lose it to the point that you're no longer the company you start out with. So I think that what you're saying has a lot of merit, and people can learn from it. Is stick with their niche, and you can still grow and make the company better. But remember where your business and where your company's at, and where you're trying to head, and keep to that. So, there's a whole bunch more things that we could dive into, more fun discussions that we never will have time for. But now, as we get towards the end of the podcast, I always ask 2 questions at the end, so we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so this one still kind of rubs me, it gets me today. But the biggest mistake I made was trusting the wrong people or person. There was one person that joined our company who was like a personal mentor of mine and someone I really looked up to and trusted and admired, confiance, and would talk to him about a lot of different things. And he ended up stealing money from us and making a copycat of our business, and basically just was a super unethical person. That was really tough. And the worst part about that is I didn't, even because I trusted him so much, I didn't have a contract with him. I just kind of said, hey, like, come join us as a consultant, we'll pay you. And it was all kind of word of like, by our word. So yeah, I would definitely say, like, don't trust people as that much, and make sure you have everything in writing and everything kind of in a contract. And at the end of the day, you can't really control people if they're going to go do unethical things. That's the world, and welcome to real life. and also kind of is flattering if someone's going to copy your business. But it's really, it was really like a sad moment because, someone that you really admire that kind of stabs you in the back that way. So yeah, that it's okay. Like there's a big market, but make sure you kind of don't be so quick to trust people.
No, I think that is a good lesson. And it's one that, it's an easy one to make the mistake in the sense that, especially if you're a trusting individual or you think, hey, everybody's going to be working just as hard as I am and they're all in it and we're all just trying to get this done together. It's one that you oftentimes will kind of just, you don't anticipate, and it's a mistake that, once you make the mistake, you learn from it, but it's an easy one to do the first time. So now you do the second question I always ask, which is, so now if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I would say learn how to sell. That would be the biggest thing. I think a lot of people who want to start businesses, they focus on a lot of different things, but they don't actually go out and get customers. And I think Mark Cuban said that sales solves all problems, something like that. And I think that's something that's super underrated. People are a little bit maybe thinking that we're in the tech world, so we're all behind the computer. We're not going to really talk to people, or we're not going to go out and make a sale. That's the lifeline of the business. If there's no sales, there's no revenue, there's no business. I mean, you can, I guess, also work in businesses where kind of like the Facebook or Twitters of you have to get really big, get millions of users, etc. But that's also a form. There's also a form of selling involved in that too, where you have to sell users to sign up to your platform. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say that's probably the most like the biggest skill that I see. I would tell people to focus on because it's the most. If you can do that, if you can learn how to bring in 5-10K a month, then you own your destiny, and you don't have to go begging to investors, etc. And when you do go and talk to investors, you are on much more solid ground. So yeah, go out and sell ABC.
No, I think that, regardless of what industry you're in, what you're doing, ability to sell and to generate revenue, to get customers, to bring in that money is one that is a universal skill that everybody needs to. And yet sometimes you get so caught up with, hey, I've got to get the coolest product or we've got to get the best platform that you kind of put that on the back burner. You don't think about that. You don't strategize about it. And then you get too far in. You says, well, now we got this really cool product and we have no idea how to sell it or even if it's sellable and if people are wanting. So I think that's certainly a skill set that people need to incorporate in early on in their company. Well, as people now want to reach out to you, they want to use VanHack, they want to be a customer, they want to be an employee, they want to be your friend, they want to be an investor, any or all of the above, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, to connect with me is pretty easy. Just go to vanhack.com and sign up as a company or as an employer. Click on hiring and sign up, create a free account. Our team will reach out. If you want to connect with me directly, my email is just my first name, Ilya, Ilya, @vanhack.com. And I'm also the only person in the world with my name. So it's pretty easy to find me on Google. And LinkedIn would be the best channel to connect with me.
Well, awesome. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to reach out to you, connect with you, use your service, and check you out to learn more. Well, it's been a pleasure, Ilya, to have you on the podcast. Now, for those of you that are listeners and you have your own journey to tell and you have a fun journey to tell, we'd love to have you on the podcast. So feel free to go to Inventive Journey now I'm becoming tongue-tied. Let me try that one more time. So, if you want to tell your journey, come on the podcast. Feel free to go to inventivejourneyguest.com. We'd love to have you on and hear your journey. If you're a listener, make sure to click subscribe so you can hear all the new episodes. And lastly, if you ever need help with patents and trademarks, feel free to reach out to us, and we're always here to help. Well, thanks again, Ilya. It's been a pleasure to hear your journey, and I wish you the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Evan. It was a pleasure.